A recent update has given bots in CSGO Deathmatch improved AI. Rather than to run about looking for the next person to shoot like a Call of Duty player would, they'll now play smarter, running to key locations, listening out for sounds, and remembering where they saw enemies last. I believe this was done to help them to behave in a more human-like manner and to make playing with or against them more enjoyable. Or more difficult. Why not both? And it could possibly be to prepare them for the next operation that will be coming out next week. I wish. If you fancy playing against them yourself, you can right now in deathmatch mode. So how has their behaviour changed? Perhaps the most noticeable adjustment, although not the most exciting, is how they now take 3 seconds to buy a weapon after spawning. This pause is obviously to imitate the time it takes for players to choose a weapon to play with, and will likely serve to cut down on the number of human players who are unfairly shot in the back by a freshly spawned AI player. So although this change in behaviour isn't something to get that excited about, it's important that we've covered it. Now to move on to the more interesting behaviours. Their aim has been made to look a lot more natural. They often overshoot when turning corners, ending up looking into walls or at the floor. This accurately mimics a person who's not quite used to his mouse's sensitivity, or who has something else on his mind when warming up for a competitive match. Valve really have thought of everything. Their behaviours with different weapons and at different skill levels is available in this bt_config text file if you're interested in taking a look. They treat various types of weapons differently from one another, since firing them optimally requires different sets of rules. For instance, they won't use shotguns and rifles in the same way as one another. But there are still limitations to this. They'll still only use secondary fire with the revolver, and won't use the SG or AUG scope, though Bez the Bot Whisperer believes it could be possible with future additions to this text file. With the sniper, sometimes they zoom in and remain zoomed in as they run about for a bit, which also mimics some real players that I've seen, and they also stop, scope, flick, shoot. And they still struggle to keep up with players who are moving. So as long as you remain on your toes, then you should be able to outsmart bot snipers. Though with adjustments to the text file, this could be changed. From my own observations about them, after they've seen you, they take a moment to start firing. How long depends on the difficulty level, and they continue firing after the enemy has died instead of immediately seeking out their next target, again mimicking human reflexes. Intentional or not, their delayed reflexes can often lead to a fair few wallbangs, so maybe it's best this is kept in. Some of the tap shooting they do is extremely authentic, but the spraying itself looks horribly fake. As you know, weapons in CSGO have a recoil pattern, and the bots trace this perfectly, which can look very odd at times as their view shoots down unnaturally. Not dissimilar to an aimbot really. I guess that's literally what it is in this case. This flick action gets worse the larger the gun's recoil patterns are, so it's particularly noticeable with guns like the SG and AUG. I don't think the shooting is going to fool anybody, but the bit before and the bit after might. From my observations, the new AI also spends more time hunting players that they've previously seen or heard, even going as far as to look away from spots you'd normally expect the enemies to come from in deathmatch mode. I'd sometimes ask myself where they were going, before looking at the minimap and realising that an enemy was lurking just around the corner there. But it's dangerous to try and assess AI just from observations. AI gets very complicated. I could be interpreting some of their actions as intentional, when actually it's just a result of coincidence. It's this uncertainty with AI that can make testing it difficult. For an example of this, take the game Aliens Colonial Marines, which shipped with a 1-letter typo in its AI script. This went undetected for years until discovered by a player. Fixing this made the alien AI much smarter, allowing for them to flank and to ambush the player. So to make sure we're not missing anything, let's look at the science behind the AI to see what's going on. The YouTube channel, AI and Games, has an excellent video showing how AI in Half-Life works, using finite state machines and how that sort of thing was eventually superseded by goal-oriented action planning systems. It's really worth a watch. But if I had to summarise, I describe the bot AI systems as a glorified flowchart, where certain choices and actions are allowed under certain conditions, the intention being to make them behave realistically and within the constraints of what they are within the digital world they inhabit. Bez the Bot Whisperer showed me the cv-bot-ai but debug target command. This shows the inner thoughts of one of the bots on the server. It displays dozens of different titles across the screen in various changing colours. This is how a bot in CSGO thinks. Some of its options are disabled at certain times. It can't, for instance, fire and reload at the same time. Or, I don't know. It would get complicated to try and explain this, plus I don't really know how it works myself. Honestly, I didn't find looking at this information too useful in working out how the bots behaved. For this, let's go deeper into the scripts folder for CSGO, to this one in particular. Inside these files is all sorts of cool stuff, and yes, it can be changed. For a start, here's the 3-second buy time delay, so you could make that longer or shorter if you wanted to. But more interestingly, there's talk of memory. They don't just run about shooting when they see things. They remember sounds that they've heard, or enemies that they spotted but then lost again. They might get distracted by a firefight, but after all that's over, they'll check their memory to see if there's anything else that they should be investigating, which certainly explains why they sometimes start running off somewhere odd even when there's no enemies there anymore. Don't expect anything too genius from them though. Their short-term memory is 3 seconds long, and their long-term is 10. And they forget they're in a fight after 0.7 of a second. A goldfish could do better. And if I'm not mistaken, their memory for stuff they've seen only extends up to 1,500 units, while their audio extends to 3,000. Maybe sight trumps an audio memory, but they fall back to hearing if they're truly out of things to do. Also, there's a minimum audio range of 400, so in theory, if you're closer than that, but behind them, then you can do whatever the hell you like, and they won't know you're there unless they turn around and see you. It's interesting that there's a branch for healing if their health is below 60. Could Valve be preparing an operation where bots could serve as companions? You heard it here first. Unless you watch Banana Gaming, who suggested the same thing over a week ago. And last, if they don't know what else to do and there's nothing in their memory banks, they resort to hunting areas for enemies, randomly chosen between the bomb sites and the spawn sites. This should, hopefully, on average, move them all towards the more important locations of the map, before running to another one if they find nothing of interest at the one they're at. This is shown nicely here, with 2 bots on the server and sped up 16 times. The improvements to the AI are welcome, but it's worth mentioning the limitations of these AI systems. They're still based on behavior trees as opposed to neural networks, which is that cool new technology where computers learn from information they're fed, surpassing the limitations of human-coded designs. I'm actually a little bit surprised this wasn't done here, since I thought if anyone was going to do this, it would have been Valve. Just last year, during a presentation, Valve explained how they had 64 Blade servers running 24 hours a day to crunch through the 600,000 or so 5v5 matches played on CSGO daily. They were doing this to scan for suspicious player activity, whereupon the suspected player would be automatically submitted for judgment from the Overwatch system. Scanning such a colossal quantity of matches requires 1,667 processors to be on 24 hours a day. All of this in place, scanning how every player in Counter-Strike behaves. It seems like the perfect system to train bot behavior on. Plus, the irony of it would be that they could use something intended to detect humans using bots in order to create bots who behave more like humans. But it doesn't seem like they've done this just yet. This kind of thing is possible. An experimental branch in EA created self-learning AI bots for Battlefield 1. They still acted a bit silly at times, but it's a solid attempt to create AI for a sophisticated game. And I do think it is the future of gaming, as it will bypass many of the limitations of traditional AI systems. Who knows what the future will hold for Counter-Strike's bots? One thing's for sure, Bez the Bot Whisperer will be ready for it. Thanks to him for helping me with this video. Once again, his knowledge and enthusiasm for non-human players has helped me no end. Check out his YouTube channel here, and thank him if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to him as well.